All right, guys, welcome to the Men Made for More podcast, joined with special guest Udo Erasmus. I think I nailed the name right. Our fellow, the Polish connection I think we share must be part of that. So Udo, thanks so much for taking some time and coming on here today.
Yeah, thank you. This should be fun.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. And I want to just pass it right back to you to start, to give listeners, an overview, at least a Cliff Notes version of kind of your background. I know you've had some, pretty interesting things through childhood and through starting your business of overcoming some adversity and some things that I'd love for you to be able to speak on, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I was born in 1942. 1942 was the middle of the Second World War. And I was born in what was then Poland what was then Germany is now Poland. And at the end of the war, I was 2, not yet 3. And we were fleeing out of Poland westward into Germany on horse-drawn hay wagons, mostly mothers and children, little children, young children. The men were all off at war, and we were being chased by the communists in tanks and trucks. And these were dirt roads. There was no military presence on the road. And the Allies, the good guys, were using us refugees, women and young children, as target practice, shooting at us from planes. And so we were kind of caught in that crossfire. And I don't remember so much. There were dead horses and dead people in the ditches. I just remember mostly fear, confusion, chaos, anxiety, hunger, like basic stuff, right? Really basic stuff, just feelings. Mm-hmm. And then we made it out. I got left behind. So I was in an orphanage for a few weeks. At 2, that's probably a fairly, how could you say? It's a pretty impressionable experience. Mm. We eventually got reunited. I was really shy as a kid because I didn't grow up in a place where there was safety. And so I never felt safe. I didn't know what I could depend on. My mother left, so mother wasn't dependable. Father wasn't there. The surroundings changed all the time. So there was really nothing. This is not where I recommend people raise their children, right? And so I was really shy, never felt safe, read a lot of books because books are safe. So you can read a book about war, but not feel like you're getting shot at. Mm. And we were getting shot at, right? So when I was 6 years old, we were living in Germany, and I listened to adults argue. And they argued all the time. They were like really, they just lost the big war. Everybody was upset. People were really short-tempered, frustrated. And they would argue about things that I thought as a 6-year-old were really trivial. So it must have been like really trivial. And it occurred to me, man, there has to be a way that people can live in harmony. And then like a little 6-year-old who doesn't realize how complicated everything is, I said, I'm going to find out how. That's been my driver all my life. And basically when it came to getting educated, or as we say on the farm, edumacated, right? I got into science because I wanted to understand how things work. Because if you know how things work, then it becomes more predictable. And so you feel safer and you feel more secure around it if you understand how things work. Then I got into biological sciences because I wanted to understand how creatures work, because this project is a creature project, right? How can people live together in harmony? So I wanted to know how creatures work. So I got into biological sciences. Then I got into psychology because I wanted to know how thinking works, right? It's like we're heading in a direction here, right? Right. Then I got into medicine just for a year because I wanted to know what health is, because that seemed to me like health would be a good place to aim for. And found out very quickly that we're only going to learn about disease here. And I talked to the dean and said, what is health? I came here to study health. He said, we don't know, we're working on it. And that was really disappointing to me because they call it healthcare. It's actually disease management. Yeah. We're only learning about disease. They don't know what health is. And the truth is, they're not even working on it, because you study sick people in abnormal situations in medicine. And I quit medicine, went back into biological sciences, because that's where you're studying health, the normal functioning of normal creatures in normal situations. That's somewhere in that you'll find some definition of health. So I got into biochemistry and genetics. And, genetics, you're in the control room. We didn't talk about epigenetics in those days. That was before epigenetics. Obviously, the environment affects how your genes work. They bring, then they come to expression, and then they allow you to live in a constantly changing environment. So you need to be sensitive to the environment. So I got into that. And then I was almost to my master's degree in genetics. And I looked at what I was doing. I said, no, there's something more important. This is not. So I quit. I quit just before my master's degree. And because I hadn't found what I was looking for. The YouTube song, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right?
That's a better version that you got right there than the YouTube one, even.
What do you mean?
I'll say it's a good rendition of it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so then I started looking for self-knowledge, because what I really needed to know is how I work. But that took me until I was 30 years old to figure out that I actually need to know how I work, right? Because we're so into what's going on outside, we're always looking away from ourselves. And that's basically is my background. And and the driver has always been, what does it take for human beings to live in harmony? It must be possible. I'm going to find out how. And I have. But it's been like a life's work to find out how people can live in harmony. Well, you can't live in harmony if you don't know who you are. Right? So the idea of becoming present in our being, because if we do that and we go deep enough, we will discover that our foundation, every human being's foundation, doesn't matter the culture, the religion, the race, the age, the gender, the culture, the politics, the foundation of every human being's existence is a piece that is also the foundation of the existence of the entire universe. And I'm talking about something experiential. If you go that deep within your own being, then you can sit in that piece that is your foundation, and you can look around and say, oh my God, peace has always been everywhere. Peace has always already been everywhere. But only peace perceives it. So if somebody doesn't see peace in the world, it's because they're not connected to that same peace within their own being. Right? Only peace can experience peace. This is really deep in a way. It's really simple, but it's really deep. On that foundation is life. What is life? Life is energy. When it separates from your body, we call that death. Your body goes in the dust. Life becomes invisible. Energy. Where's the energy come from? Well, that energy mostly comes from the sun, is absorbed into green leaves, into chlorophyll, excites atoms, which then react and form bonds to make molecules. And the solar energy is stored in the bonds between atoms, in the molecules that become our food. Now we eat the food, we break down those molecules, and the energy, the solar energy stored in the bonds between atoms that make food molecules is released. And that's life energy. So life energy is solar energy, mostly. A little bit of moonlight energy, but that's reflected sunlight, and maybe a little bit from the galaxies, but most of that is pretty far away. So the majority of life energy is solar energy. But that's the scientific outside view. When you sit still and you bring your awareness back, your focus, the focus of your awareness back inside, beyond your mind, beyond your emotions, beyond your outside world, bring it inside deep, you discover that energy as your life and your personal individual essence. And the people who talked about that essence over the history were the great masters. So one of them talked about enlightenment, which means to be lit up from within. Well, if you close your eyes and it's dark and you look into the darkness deep enough, you will discover there's light in that darkness. That light is life, and you are that light. And in fact, we kind of know that, because if I point at you and I say, Dave, whose body is that? What would you say?
It's my own body.
It's my body, right? Okay, but you know what? You just busted yourself. You've just told me that you're not the body. You just told me you're the owner of the body. The body is your property. So then the question is, well, if you're not the body, then who are you?
This where? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and who owns the body? Well, life owns the body, because the moment life separates from the body, body's history, right? So you are life, the owner of the body. And that energy, that the solar energy that you can experience subjectively as light, as sound, as feeling, that energy weighs nothing, runs everything in the body by a genetic program that it invented in an environment that was also created by life. And that light energy, that is solar energy, is everywhere around you and everywhere within you. That's the essence of your individual nature. So you're on a foundation of peace or internal awareness. You have life energy. Life energy and awareness are formless and indestructible, beyond health and illness, beyond life and death. You can't destroy something that has no form to begin with. The body is a terminal condition, temporary condition. Formed will always lose its form eventually. And the fear that goes with losing your form is not present in the energy that is life or in the awareness that is the foundation of it. So there's no fear in life and no fear in awareness, and also no fear in inspiration, which is the positive part of mind that is an emanation of the energy, the shine of the sunshine within you, the solar energy within you that is your life. Those three get almost no attention in our day-to-day life. And those three is where all of our answers for living well exist.
And before we get into that, because I know we have a lot of health stuff to get into. So you're saying a lot of people are looking for peace externally, when really the answer should be to direct it internally. They have to be able to find that first in themselves through some of the self-awareness, through that self-knowledge, identify the peace in themselves first before searching for it externally.
Right. So, but let me tell you why that happens, because you perfectly summarized that. Why does that happen? When I was in my mother's womb, I call it the Buddha tank. The womb is the Buddha tank, right? What was it like there? Well, there was nothing to do. There was nowhere to go. Everything was taken care of. And it was relatively safe. So I was floating around. My body was growing, right? And I was just floating around in the light, in the sound, in the feeling, inside, because my awareness had nowhere to go. So it was at rest, or my focus, the focus of my awareness was inside, at rest, in its source, inside, in life, or in awareness. That's where it was. So I was present inside, but absent outside. Didn't even know there was an outside when I was in my mother's womb. And that changed when I got born. got pushed out, right? Got pushed out, and now I had to cry for my breast milk. I had to cry for my diaper change. I had to cry for getting warm or getting cold, or comfort, or safety, or whatever it was, my simple needs. And because now everything was coming from the outside for the body, my awareness had to move out into the world to get to know the world in which I now had to live and learn how to survive. So in that process, I went from being present inside, absent outside, to going out through my senses into the world and becoming present outside, but absent inside. So I got disconnected from the core of my own being. And with that internal disconnection is where what I call heartache, or emptiness, or restlessness, or separation, or longing, yearning, striving, blues, loneliness, heartache, heartbreak. You know, I have 10 pages of words that we use for this uncomfortable feeling in our chest. Mm-hmm. That is the core. It is the core issue that we are driven to try to address all of our life. Most of the time we try to address it outside, but the disconnect is an inner disconnect. So nothing on the outside will reconnect that inner disconnect. To reconnect, we have to bring our awareness back home inside, to its source, inside, in the foundation of our being. That's the journey that, not having taken, has made us so destructive. Because if we don't find that connection in one thing on the outside, we'll do something else. And if something normal won't bring it, we'll start doing abnormal things. And we've done many, many destructive things in the mistaken notion that we can fix. You know, when I succeed in doing what I set out to do, I'm always hoping, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, that when I succeed, I will feel whole again. It is Alfred Adler, one of the original psychologists, said, the innermost striving of every human being is to move from a felt minus to a felt plus, which means to feel better, a striving for perfection, and a striving for God-likeness. Fundamental, innermost striving of every human being. And heartache is the call. The heartache is not about the girlfriend who dumped me. It's not about my grandmother who died. It's not about someone who I trusted who betrayed my trust. But we feel it. Those are triggers for this feeling. But the feeling itself is actually our heart calling our focus to come back home inside to life, to reconnect inside. And when we do, we feel whole. And when we feel whole, it's not about us anymore. So then the question becomes, how can I help? What needs to be done? And how can I make the biggest splash for good in the lifetime that I have in one body? Completely changes. Before it was always, what can I do that'll get me feeling taken care of? Nothing ever did. And now it's, okay, it's not about me anymore. I'm taken care of. And if I don't feel taken care of, I know where I need to bring my awareness to feel taken care of. Bring it back inside, bring it back inside, bring it back inside. Bring it home, bring it home, bring it home. And become good at doing that. And now it's like, okay, now I can give without needing something back. Now I can help where help is needed. Now I can do more, give more than I take. Because if you want to make things better, you have to give more than you take. Mm-hmm. And this is the big journey, the big transformation, you know, that we hear about, that some people say, well, we're due a reset. It's not a new world order necessarily. It's a reconnection to self that turns us into human beings that are able to give love, because our nature, the nature of the solar energy that is our life, is unconditional love for the body, unconditional love for creation, unconditional love to help where we can make life better in whatever way that we can, that we have talent or skill or experience or affinity for.
Well, it allows us to live authentic to who we really are, versus we talk a lot about what you're describing sounds like the when then paradox of it's always this looking ahead of, well, when I achieve this, then I will feel this. When I have this much money, when I have this body, when I look this certain way, when I find this relationship, then
Right.
it will fill my needs. But by being able to reach that internally, you don't have to strive for those things, and you can live like you can love authentically. You can live authentically. You don't have to try and please other
Right.
people. You don't have to try and live as someone you're not, for this myth that's going to fill this hole you have in your heart that can't be filled from anything of the world. Is that in line with what you're saying?
Yeah. The notion that if I do this and this and this, whatever it is that we figure out, when I get this done and I am successful and I accomplish it, then I'll feel whole again. That's delusional, because that's not how human nature works. That's not how it works. The disconnect is inside, the reconnect has to be inside. Now, there are things to do on the outside, but they need to be expressions of my wholeness, not expressions of my intense need for trying to get something together. And it isn't, and our nature, if we're taking it from the solar energy that we are, our nature is unconditional love. So giving and helping is second nature to us when we're in touch with what you just called our authentic being. Because a lot of what we call our authentic being is not authentic, because it's not based on experiencing ourselves the way life is, the way we are.
And how did this journey, and I know it's been a long time of this discovery of the importance of that inside out approach versus the outside in approach. How did that lead to some of these, with the focus on like health and digestion and living this healthy life? Like how did that transition happen, and what role does the health and the digestion and some of those things play in how we're feeling and how we're experiencing some of those things?
Right. You mean for me?
For you, or for others you've helped?
Yeah. Okay. So nothing much in my life worked until I got this dealt with. Because I was always struggling. Because my attitude was wrong. It's like, what do I need to do that will make me feel taken care of? Well, there's nothing you can do to feel taken care of, because you are already taken care of. It's just your awareness is out there, and the taken care of lives in here. So then obviously, if you know that, then you need to bring your awareness here where the taken care of lives. And then it changed. Then it was like, okay, now I want to help. I don't need to deal with myself anymore. I want to help. I want to make things better for people. What's the biggest splash for good I can make? Given my talents, my experiences, my affinity for things, all of that. And that's not hard. My purpose comes from my wholeness. It's already built into me. I'm unique in that wholeness, like you're unique in your wholeness, like every human being is unique, even though we're all whole from that place inside, but we're all unique as well. So I'm really good at chopping wood, for instance, right? Because I grew up on a farm and I'm really good at it. So this is something that I can do that some people are not as good at as I am. So this is a good gift for me whenever wood needs to be chopped, obviously, right? So the thing is, we already have all of that. This is not something you need a formula and then you do the formula and then all of this thing falls together. No, you already have it. The only thing that happened is you lost your connection to it. Your awareness wandered off. Your focus of awareness wandered off into either distractions, or you didn't like this ache that calls you home, and so you tried to ignore it or deny it, Or you blame this ache on somebody and made that person your enemy, and then created a life of fighting an enemy that you blamed for your heartache, when your heartache came from you losing your connection to yourself, right?
Because you put your
So,
worth in someone else or something else, and then tried to also put blame in there when that thing got taken away.
right, because we're doing it, all of it, externally, when this particular thing can only be really addressed internally. And doesn't matter what your culture is or what the words are you use, it's a feeling. It's something that when you're present to it, because you've brought your focus home, you feel unconditionally loved, unconditionally taken care of. And then it just basically, when I feel like that, I look at the world and say, amazing world. And I live into that world in a very different way than if I live into a world when I don't feel taken care of. If I'm angry, I'll see enemies, right? And then I will create enemies in my mind when they're not even there. When the person in peace wouldn't see any enemies, would just see peace. I will see enemies, and then I will live into a world of enemies, and I will then do all the things that we do in the name of protecting and fighting enemies. If I'm afraid, I'll see danger everywhere, where the person in peace sees only peace. Then I will interpret the world as being dangerous, and then I will fortify myself and hide and not take responsibility, and do the things one would do when fear, even though it wasn't real, I've made it real in my imagination. So I've imagined fear into being, and I've imagined enemies into being, even though by its own nature, the entire universe is filled from peace end to end, and filled with unconditional love end to end. But if I'm not seeing it, then it's like, for me, it doesn't exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, which is in like I was saying, we look for these things externally that we want to point fingers at, and we want to blame for the reasons, when we have to draw that internally. And I'd be curious from your background, and I know, like you said, this carries over across different religions and races, and is universal across the thing. And because I ran a different way of coming about it through Christianity, and I'd be curious of your practical steps for someone who's listening to this and they're like, oh yes, I like that makes sense, but how do I actually go about that? Because for me, mine was a shift from, okay, I need to succeed, I need to start this business, I like these things will fill me, I'll graduate school, I'll do this, and until I accepted God inside of me and looked inward, versus relying on money, on a relationship, on a marriage, on a graduation from school, on success in athletics, then that's when I started to notice the same transformation that it sounds like you're talking about. So what other practical strategies are there for someone who this makes sense to, who can relate to this, who maybe has been blaming something else for their unhappiness, the dread they feel inside? Like where can someone start with something like this?
Well, I think the practical start is this one, this uneasy feeling. Because the uneasy feeling is your call to come home. And to call to come home, like if you're in a Christian culture, you will find Christian words for that, because the master spoke about those things. Now, to me, the masters were teachers of human nature. And they taught people how to live fully present in all of their being and their surroundings, not lost in their head. And they did it in different ways because they lived in different cultures. They used different words for it. But the issue they addressed, which is not feeling whole or our disconnection from ourselves, that's the same, because it's a biological thing. This is not like, and religions are different ways of talking about the same issue if you get to the foundation of it. Now, I had some experiences that I would describe in Christian language, just because I grew up in a Christian culture. If I'd have grown up in a Hindu culture, I'd use Hindu language. I mean, I don't mean just Sanskrit and the Indian language, but the way they talked about it in their culture from the days of Krishna and Ram. Lord Ram, right? So my experience, my reset experience did not come from the war. My reset experience came from a very nasty experience I had with Christians. And I was asking the question about the ache in the heart and how do I take care of that and what does it mean? And I couldn't shake it because I was feeling it all the time. My heart was aching, 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 aching. Couldn't distract myself. Knew it was with me, so I couldn't blame it on anybody. Couldn't deny it, couldn't ignore it. So it was always there. And so I started trying to understand the message of the master. My question was, what was the experience that John had that inspired him to the following poetry? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, blah, 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 blah. And Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us, full of grace and truth. I don't know about you, but the hair goes up in the back of my head. Even when I say it now, I've said it so many times. I said, I want to know what John felt that inspired him to write that poetry. That poetry was an expression of something he felt. What was that experience? I want that experience. And then a couple of weeks later, I said, actually, why stop at John? I want to have the experience that Jesus had, that inspired him to be able to heal, that inspired him to give the Sermon on the Mount, that inspired him to the life he lived. What was that experience? I want to have that experience. So how do you get there? I took the red letter edition. Everything Jesus says is in red, everything else is in black. And I wanted just to contemplate what was left of whatever it was that he did 2,000 years ago, because that went through translation. So you don't know how much, and it wasn't everything he did was not in the book. Mm-hmm. But there should be something in there that might get me closer. So I thought that was a good project. And I went to a group of Christians who I thought were on the same track I was on, trying to figure it out, trying to understand why they're still talking about him 2,000 years later. And nobody remembers my grandfather who hasn't been dead for 50 years. What's the difference? So I went in and they had a coffee house, and long story. It's a long story, so I'll just keep it short. Got into there, sat down on a chair. Guy came down, swooping down, and they had some agenda. I didn't think they had an agenda. I thought they were just trying to understand it too. And maybe we could share some wisdom. Maybe we could all learn something. So I sat down, guy swooped next to me, and I didn't say, hi, my name is, I didn't do any of that. I just said, hey, it must be possible to see God and live. Because Moses did, and Jesus did, and Elisha did, and Elisha did, and a bunch of other people did. And we were always told, if you see God, you die. I said, where's that fair? Right? So I thought he would maybe have some insight on it. Well, he went ballistic. He said, you're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out of here. So off I go, and I'm standing on the sidewalk in the dark and say, holy shit, I haven't seen God. Maybe I'm asking a question I shouldn't be asking. And I got really confused. And I was so confused. And I was so desperate, I really wanted to know. So in those days, this was in 1970. So in those days, whenever I was confused or got, just like, I'd go out in nature to clear my head. So off I went out into nature on a beach, west coast of Vancouver Island, slept on the beach for a weekend to clear my head. And there was a little building somebody had built out of plastic draped over logs on the beach. Went there, went to sleep. Middle of the night, I woke bolt upright from dead asleep. And there was a being made of light. Now, I can't tell you whether it was inside or outside now. Can't tell you if it was male or female. Can't tell you if it was old or young. But a being made of light, human being made of light, embodying a message. No words. And I say, well, that's because light has no lips and doesn't speak English, right? But it embodied a message. So I could put words to the message. And the message was, I am come not to judge, but to love. And it's like instantly, all my confusion and desperation was gone, I have never since had a question or any doubt about what the central message of the masters was. I am come not to judge, but to love. That's the message of Christ to the world. That's the message of life energy, which is Christ, which is the light, to the body. And that is the message, you could say, of God to humanity. I am come not to judge, but to love. And then when that happened, I learned a lot. I did, I said, like, who is this? Is this my soul, or is this Jesus? Or, because no sticker tape on the head say, hi, I'm right.
Yeah, right.
Didn't know, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized, you know what? They are all the same. So you have the solar energy, you have the Christ energy, you have the spirit or life energy, messy, how those words are used sometimes. The essence of life is that energy. And that energy is everywhere, because your senses hear, see, feel, taste, and smell energy, right? We think, oh yeah, I see people running. No, what you're seeing is energy. So senses pick up energy. If you think of it that way, you hear a sound, it's energy. You see something, it's energy. Colors, movement, shapes is energy. That energy is the same energy as my life energy, as solar energy, as Christ energy, as Buddha energy, as the master's essential energy. And it lives within us, and we live within it. And when you can see that, and it takes time, because it's a different, we're used to seeing everything as things and, things moving around. But when you start seeing the energy of it, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It has never not been everywhere. Right? And that's an experience.
In the wrong places. Yeah.
And that's an experience. But it's an experience that is not an experience my culture trained my mind to look at, to see. It's one that I was very fortunate to have some really bad experiences that made me really sincere. And out of that sincerity came a different kind of perception of the same things that I had always seen in a different way. So nothing changes except our perception of it changes. Nothing changes except it's not my eyes are looking. My eyes are the instrument through which life uses to see the world. But my eyes actually don't see. My eyes are just an instrument. Life sees, peace sees, awareness sees, right? And everything that happens on this platform of peace, platform of life, platform of inspiration or inspired creativity.
And how is this? How has this realization then shifted what you've been up to in the products you're giving to people, the services, your business? Like, how is this realization connected to what you're doing now?
Yeah. So that didn't, what I've done in terms of flaxseed oil, developing the method for making oils with health in mind, and flax oil and udos oil, and digestive enzymes, probiotics, fiber for digestion, and all of that. That happened afterwards, because I could never, because it was like everything I tried to do before was always about, I need to feel taken care of, and it wouldn't take care of me. So I'd quit. Right. And as soon as I saw, and I did so many projects, and as soon as I saw it wasn't going to take care of me, I would quit. Say, well, that's not it. Well, that's not it. Well, that's not it. Well, that's not it. When this got taken care of, now it was okay. What needs to be done? Because I didn't make oils for my satisfaction. I made oils because I realized 99% of the population does not get enough omega-3s. They've just been established as essential nutrients, which means you can't make them. You got to have them from outside. If you don't get enough, your health goes down. If you don't get them long enough, you die. if you bring them back before you die, all of the problems that come from not getting enough are reversed, because life knows how to build a body, provided we take responsibility for making sure all of the essential building blocks it needs to make that body land inside. That's the only part we play right here, right? What you drink, what you breathe, what you eat. And once you swallow it, once it's in there, life takes over and does everything with it. We don't have to do anything more. That's like, wow, that's amazing, right? 24/7, 365, right? And when I realized that we could make oils with health in mind by protecting them from light, oxygen, and heat, and they're the most sensitive nutrients, and they're the most easily damaged, they're like perishable goods, we can give them the protection, then we could help 99% of the population live a better quality life. And when I realized that, I went off like a firecracker. I said, oh my God, we could help so many people. And the inspiration of that is what drove the whole project. I had no background in business, but I was super enthusiastic. And out of that super enthusiasm and the clarity of what was possible, I was making decisions every day. What are the standards going to be? How do we build the machinery? Who do we business with? What kind of care do the oils need? How do we get the word out? And I was making decisions one after the other, like a complete business master without any business background. And I guess what I'm saying is that enthusiasm is more important than all the business skills on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why? Because it's the energy. People found the energy attractive. People wanted to help because there was an energy around it. There was an inspiration around it. People love inspiration. They'll even follow crooks that are inspired. They'll even follow dictators that are inspired, right? Because inspiration is like, if I'm not inspired by my own connection to myself, then I'm going to follow someone who is. But then you don't have control. And sometimes you don't know what the agendas are behind which people are inspired. Hitler was inspired. I'm sorry, but Hitler was inspired. But he was inspired by something that was really, really, really nasty. Right? But people followed him because inspiration is attractive. So when someone is inspired, it's really important that their goal be for life and for everyone, not just for small groups.
Yeah.
Right? And inspiration is dangerous if your goal is off. And inspiration is amazing when your goal is for enhancing, improving, embellishing life.
And all that starts with, and to summarize, it sounds like that was the deep internal seated piece you had, that identity that you found within that allowed you to be inspired about something without the financial ego in the way, without trying to just worry so much about the tactics, and just being able to say, hey, there's a need that needs to get met. And I don't know anything about business, but I'm trying to help people. And when that drives you, that's probably what's led to the successful business that you have today.
That is no doubt in my mind about it. And I wasn't thinking about how much money can I make. If I'd have asked the bean counter, you know what I'm talking about, right? Bean counters. If I'd had asked an accountant or a lawyer, should I do this? Should we make flax oil? They would have said, don't even start. Because if you did the math on the finances, it didn't look that good, because you're starting from scratch. You got nothing. You want to have this big project. You don't even have any money to get it started. And they always think it's money that, and a lot of people that teach business say, what gets done gets paid is what gets paid for. No, it's not true. What gets done is what someone discovers or develops a passion for. Because passion or inspiration takes you out of your mental ruts where everything is too much work and frees your energy. And then it becomes fun to do something that's never been done before, especially if it has a goal. that is of benefit to the people that it touches. Right? So for me, I would say to every human being's purpose is already embedded in their being. But to find it, you may have to sit down and get really quiet, get really still, see how still you can become. Close your eyes, shut off all your distractions. See how still you can become. See how deeply still you can become. See how long you can stay there. Breathe lightly and slowly. And while you're present in that space, look, listen, feel, taste what there is inside of you. And in that, you find your inspiration. And in that, you find your life and the meaning of your life. And in that, you find your peace and the foundation from which anything is possible. And from that, you can then pick what works in your time, in your surroundings, out of your abilities. It's already there. But if you don't get quiet, then you don't see it because of all the noise that you've got going on in your own head.
Yeah. And the noise in our head, if that's not enough, there's about a million other distractions from text messages to emails.
If you got enough noise in your head, you'll notice there's a lot of noise outside too.
Yeah. So that's
then it's like, it's all noise.
Yeah. An ongoing battle to try and fight that noise, but that's what's going to lead to, and I know a lot of people listening might be, it seems like they're chasing success, or they listen to these things for self-help reasons or for improvement, which, like you said, you can find from being quiet, but I think you're going to find something even more beneficial, something more lasting, something more fulfilling by being able to drown out the noise and be okay living as the person internally you can find peace in, instead of looking externally for some of those things.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, the cherished state, in my view, is to be fully present in all of my being and my surroundings. And then my being and my surroundings flow well together and not be lost in my head. So all we got to do is get out of the way of that, bring awareness a little deeper, right? And what are the parts? Number one is the internal awareness, the peace part. Number two is life energy, the unconditional love part. Number three is inspired creativity. That's the positive mind, the bridge between life and the world, of giving and developing things that help life. Number four is the body, food and fitness, digestion, and detox, and sleep and rest. That's the instrument for the physical stuff. Number five is survival smarts, and that's protection and procreation. And it's basically your body protected from the rest of the world. Number six is social group, because people affect your health, and how to create social group or a presence in a social group that is uplifting and supporting and cooperating and connecting and friendly, etc. And not necessarily going everywhere, because some social groups are not conducive to living from your heart. And then that's number six. Number seven is environment, natural environment. So it's like creatures, planet, solar system, and more, right? And number eight is infinite awareness. And infinite awareness is an extension of internal awareness, that peace. When you get into that peace in the core of your being, then you notice that peace is not limited to the confines of your body. It actually goes out to infinity. One piece, you are the center of it, and everybody else is also the center of a piece that has no outside dimension, that has no inside or outside, that is completely at peace. And on that platform of peace, the entire universe is created, maintained, and dissolves again when its cycle is done, whatever is formed, right? Mm-hmm. Those eight those 8 pieces, you got to give each one its due. And when you do that, you have a rich, full life. And a lot of things, when I do that, when I live in that place, I find I take on bigger projects because I don't have the limitation of I need to take care of myself. And I take on bigger projects. I do what needs to be done, not because it's going to take care of me, but because it needs to be done. So I will take on projects that are bigger, that nobody's doing. And out of that comes greater success in the material world too. Because that's how it works. Mm-hmm. When I'm saying, well, no, I'm not going to deal with the fact that every human being needs to live their life lit up, because I don't feel lit up. I've just taken the biggest project off the table. The biggest possible project is that 8 billion people live their lives lit up from within, because the light's already there. It's a matter of looking into it instead of looking away from it. When we do that, we feel rich enough and taken care of enough that we won't steal each other's stuff. When we stop stealing each other's stuff, we can live in harmony. When we live in harmony, it's very easy to make sure that everybody's basic needs are met on a moment-to-moment basis. I call that the $88 trillion project.
Wow. That's
the big project. That's the really big project. Everything else people are doing, whether you're talking about Amazon or Apple and all those guys, right? Those are small projects in comparison.
Right.
And we live in a time when this is a possible project. The world is united in terms of communications. We have enough knowledge both in science and in experience to be able to create that in a way that makes sense. And we literally could roll that out in a matter of a year or two.
Yeah, it's wild.
If we have the mind to do that, if we have the, and so that's basically what I'm living into. I don't know how much time I have. I'm not really concerned about that, but that's the goal. I don't know what other goal is as worthwhile as that.
I think it's a great goal. We appreciate what you're doing and what you're about. I think is exciting to hear the journey is just amazing too, from childhood adversity to business adversity to the realizations you've had and where you've gotten to. And I think it's easy for listeners to think you have it all figured out. You sound so at peace. You sound so, and I know a lot of that's the hard work and the awareness you've brought within, but I want to ask you openly, what do you still struggle with, or where do you find yourself having to come back? Because I think some people have this picture that it's an arrival point of you realize what you've realized, and then all of a sudden life's just easy and you have no setbacks and no problems, and you just have it all figured out, right? But
before I answer that, let me say one more thing. Mm-hmm. When I was in the war, it was frightening. It was really scary. I look back at the same war now and I say, what a gift. Because if it hadn't been for the war, I wouldn't have had my nose rubbed in the importance of asking that question and looking for an answer. See, because if your life is really easy, you tend to be a little more cavalier, and you may just be a little more sloppy, and you may actually be doing things that will lead you in the direction of a war instead of leading you in the direction of peace. And frankly, you can look at the world right now and you can see that happening, right? And it's because we're sloppy. And the idea is that either you're going to choose peace because of wisdom and insight, or you're going to choose peace because you're getting your butt kicked because you've created a destructive situation that then scares you to your senses, right? And the same thing with all of my others. I mean, I have had a divorce and I've had pesticide poisoning, and every disaster in my life has been a gift. Not at the time it happened, I didn't recognize it, but in retrospect has been an incredible gift because of the learning that it forced, because I got my nose rubbed in, not doing something in line with nature or in line with nature or my nature. And so in that sense, my best experiences have been my worst experiences, because they led to the most searching, the most considering, the most inquiring, and therefore the most answers. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now ask me that question again.
Yeah, the question was along the lines of, because you've had these realizations, I think people listening from the outside can think that it's an arrival point. If you never have to work on it, you're just always level-headed. There's no challenges that come your way. What are some of the ongoing struggles to be open about that you have to bring yourself back to, or what are you doing on a day-to-day basis to, because I'm guessing you still have the tendency, like humans do, to respond to things in a way of defaulting to maybe stress or anxiety or worry. How are you combating some of that?
Right. Okay. So, let me say it in a way that's also going to be helpful to people who are watching this and listening to it. I live in the same world of stresses and confusions and misrepresentations and delusions as everybody else. What I'm really clear about, and maybe more clear than most people I know, is that at the same time that I have stresses and anxieties and depression and PTSD and all of those kind of issues, at the same time that I'm having them in part of my being, which is mostly my mind and emotions, I also have this unconditional peace, this unconditional love, this inspiration and creativity at the same time in another part of my being. And I have a choice where I go. And so my recommendation is, look, if you're anxious, whatever it is, whatever the next crisis is, because there's always one every year. There's like crisis flavors, right?
Right.
And sometimes they're manufactured, and sometimes they're, they come out of our ignorance, and whatever they come out of. At the same time that I can get stressed by something, or that I can use something as an excuse to stress myself. That's actually a nasty way of saying it. But fundamentally, we say a person or a situation stressed us. No, they were a trigger for us to stress ourselves. Number one, we don't have to do that. You can leave the stuff outside. If you don't need to address it, you don't need to be stressed. If you do need to address this, you're probably going to do a better job addressing it if you don't get stressed than if you get stressed. Not always, but most of the time. But at the same time that you give anxiety and your worries and your so-called problems attention, also make sure that you give attention to that in you that is beyond stress, that cannot be stressed, that is always in peace, that is always unconditionally loving, that is always inspired. And you live as a composite of all of that. Choose wisely, and the places where you're weak, if you're weak in peace and weak in unconditional love, then give them more attention and become good at getting good at tuning into them, because they already exist within you. You're not dragging anything from outside. Like nobody, it doesn't matter what kind of rules you have to follow on the outside. Nothing keeps you from going to your own magnificence on the inside. And your body is a terminal condition. One day it will check out. The stress is always about, whatever it is, the environment will collapse, or the bug will going to get you, or, the economy crashed, or, there's always something. Your body is a terminal condition. It's okay, because you're much more than the body, and some of what you are in your nature is not terminal. So the terminal and the non-terminal, the finite and the infinite, both live together in you as part of your being. And the finite in you will never get stressed, and the finite in you will never die. And if you get stressed, it's because you focus more on what is finite, what is terminal in you. And that's how they scare you, right? You're just a body, and your body is going to crap out if you don't do this and this and this and this. And you then become subject by your own ignorance of yourself to other people's agendas, or to other organizations' agendas, or to, and then of course they draw you out. Look at this. Oh my God, right? And then that gets your attention until you get to the point where, you know what? I like my peace more than your crisis production. And I'm going to stay in my peace while I enjoy your crisis production as the kind of entertainment that it is. Right?
And we have a choice. That's the biggest takeaway I can pull from that.
Yeah. But it's hard to have that choice if you haven't done the homework of discovering that unconditional stuff inside of yourself. And that's why it's important. That's why Socrates said, know thyself. He didn't say know everything but thyself. He said, know thyself. Why did he say that? Because he knew that the unexamined life is not worth living. He knew that. Right?
And if we've never experienced it, it's going to be hard to draw on that. It's going to make it much harder to draw on that in the moments of stress, in the moments of worry, in the moments of pandemics and economy crashes and all those things.
What is that saying? When you're up to your butt in alligators, it's really hard to remember that your original intent was to drain the swamp. Right? Yeah. And that's, so the idea is not you neglect peace until you're in a war. And then you say, oh God, please bring us peace. That's the time to cultivate the peace, is before you get to the war. Right. Because that's how you preempt the war. And you don't want peace to be the cure for war. You want peace to be a state of being that makes war unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because from peace, like when you talk about violence, I have never heard of anybody in a moment of peace being violent to another person. I mean, violence against women, violence against races, whatever it is, that never comes from a place of peace. That always comes from a place of discontent. And then it's discontent. Oh, it's them. They're taking our jobs away. Or, because it always begins with discontent. And I'm just saying, you know what? Number one, homework. Come back home to your peace, and then live in a world full of creatures. And all those creatures were chosen by life to be alive. Not by your culture, not by your mindset, but by life to be alive just like you were. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, why exactly am I treating people badly? Why aren't we helping each other? Why aren't we making sure each other's kids are all doing okay? Why aren't making sure that everybody's fed? This is not complicated stuff. It becomes complicated when we get disconnected from our heart. And then we start to do heartless things. And that's, all the problems we have in the world, every one of them started with heartlessness that led to discontent, that led to bad thoughts, that led to negative words, that led to destructive actions that had destructive consequences. And how do we fix it? It will not get fixed until we reconnect to the wholeness and then begin to live into a world of wholeness and expand that wholeness to include the entire place, the entire world, the entire, all of nature, all of its creatures.
So good, Udo. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your experience and sharing that. That's all so much good stuff, so much good takeaways. And I know you have a couple places people can find you. There's, I believe, a video series you put together, and also that the 8-step process you were talking about. Can you give just a little more information on
Well, there's a couple. Yeah, I'm not hard to find. I have a website called Udo's Choice, udoschoice.com. That's where the products are. I have a website called udoerasmus.com, or the Udo, THEUDO.com. And we have some courses and some all kinds of educational stuff there. And I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. I'm not hard to find.
Lots of places.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what I get to do. Honestly, I'm 70. I'll be 79 this year.
Looking good.
And
Love it.
I got to say, this is the best part of my life. Long time to work up to it. You know, I began to talk like I'm talking now in 9/11, because I realized discontent people will always spread discontent. If people who know what contentment is, and I claim to be one of the people who does, if we don't do more to spread contentment than they do to spread discontent, then guess where we're headed? Not complicated. And at that point, because it was important to me to do this practice. At that point, I said, you know what? I need to be more public. And then I began to try and figure out how to talk about it in a coherent way, in a way that maybe makes sense to people, and to encourage people to find the contentment and make that overtake the discontent. That's the playing field, right?
So, well, I want to thank you for your years of hard work. So I can tell you are well spoken on it, and it's a message that people definitely need to hear. So just a testament to your years of self-learning in that, and years of just surrounding yourself with people that can help you better understand that, so that you can better communicate it for others. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking time and being willing to share all that, Udo. Means a lot to myself and our audience.
And thanks for being an amplifier for the message. You're just as important, because otherwise I'd be talking to myself in the mirror.
So we might as well share with people, and that's great, Udo. Well, again, I appreciate it. Means a lot. We'll include some of your links and resources there in the show notes for anyone interested in learning more, checking out your courses or your program. We'll have that linked up in the show notes. So thanks again, Udo.
All right,
really appreciate it.